All right, what's going on, everybody? Ryan Ogren here with MoneyMake Marketing, and today we're going to be going through cold outreach math, all right? Economics behind making your cold outreach campaigns profitable. And this is the thing that we actually start with first when we onboard a new client. We actually do this math in our heads on the actual sales call. So when we are asking questions like, what's your average deal size? What is the actual deal size of these particular target markets when we're selling X or Y or Z? And when it's fully mature, what does that account look like? And the reason we ask those questions is because we're trying to back into if we can make you profitable on our campaigns or not, okay? And so I'm gonna be doing a quick video and walking you guys through that math, like what we actually go through to actually craft a profitable economic model, I guess you could say, our funnel model on our cold outreach campaigns before we even onboard a client. And I think this is going to be beneficial for you. If you're a company that's watching this and you're thinking about doing some cold outreach, thinking about working with us or just other vendors in general, it'll be helpful for you to understand like what KPIs you need to be hitting in order to be profitable on that particular campaign. It'll also be beneficial for you to ask questions to that particular marketing agency or marketer to see if they know their shit, if they can actually get somebody profitable in a cold outreach campaign. And I think a lot of agencies out there never do this math. So they are just constantly taking money from people and burning them because they aren't gonna be able to get them and make them money back. So it just, if you're able to do this math up front, you know when you can win and you also know where your KPIs need to be so you are profitable and know you can win. So that's why we do this. Let's just do this math, okay? And real quick, if you guys don't know who I am, I'm Ryan Ogren from MoneyMake Marketing. We did $3.55 million in collected revenue for our clients in 2025. So that's collected revenue that is in their bank accounts right now. That is not contracted revenue. Contracted revenue is like way higher than that. And our goal in 2026 is to hit 10 million in collected revenue for our clients. The reason we use collected revenue, it's a no BS stat, right? It's a deal closed in our client's bank account. That's what people want as far as marketers goes. That's why people come to us. They want deals that are actually going to close. And obviously we have big high ticket deals and major accounts that we actually source for our clients. But that's why we talk about that, because we are successful and our clients are profitable. All right. So that's why you should listen. So math, the very first thing that you actually need to know is client deal size. Okay. And you could go off of contracted revenue. That's one way. Just keep in mind like the cash cycle. So when it's contracted revenue versus cash collected revenue. So contracted revenue and then collected revenue. Those are both like the two categories. So like a lot of our clients are manufacturers, they're B2B, and they have contracted revenue, they have POs, then they have collected revenue, which is actual cash collected. We like to track both just because it shows like what's coming down the pipeline. I recommend you track both, but those are just a couple things. What really is like the king is lifetime gross profit, okay? So the reason we want to do gross profit, we don't want to do net because there's things in your company that we can't control. There's expenses, you can obviously mess with those numbers. Gross profit, lifetime gross profit is so important because it is literally the cost to fulfill for just that client, that next unit. And so when we talk about lifetime gross, or that's what gross margin is for those that are listening, excuse me. And so we're talking about lifetime gross profit. It just tells us how much money you're going to be making after you fulfilled for that client. And so when we're talking about profit and being profitable in acquisition, this is like a huge key metric. So I'm going to put stars all around this one. And a lot of clients, when we ask them questions on a sales call, they don't know this number, right? It's pretty interesting that they don't know this number. They know this number, this contracted revenue, or they know the collected revenue, but they oftentimes don't know what their lifetime gross profit is. Now, as a marketer, you can take advantage of this and just sell them a crock of shit and they're not going to know any different, or you can actually just calculate it in your head. And so essentially what we ask then is, all right, what's the deal size? And then what are your margins on that? Those are questions that they do know the answers, and then we just back into this as an estimate, okay? So this is the number that we actually want to use, lifetime gross profit. You can use lifetime value, but that's top line, and that doesn't take into account gross profit or actual gross margin and the COGS and the cost of services and all that stuff, cost of goods sold. So if we're talking about, let's say we just use lifetime value, right? And it's $1 million deal, but it costs, our client has a 50% gross margin on there, and we spent $500,000. true, but like we spent 500,000 to acquire that customer. If we're using lifetime value and we spent 500,000 to acquire that customer and then they take 500,000 to fulfill, they didn't make any money on that particular deal, right? So that's why we use lifetime gross profit, because then when we know, all right, gross 500,000, that's what we know. That's the number that we're using to determine if we're profitable or not on the acquisition. Okay, so that's the first thing, client deal size, and we're looking at lifetime gross profit on the deal. One deal, and then think through maturing of that account. Okay, so a lot of our clients, they'll do a small deal and then it turns into like recurring business. So you also want to take into account like estimates on what is this company, the deal size that they have, what kind of volume do they actually have to offer us? Is there a way that this account is just giving us a portion of their business, and then as we get better and we work with them and establish that relationship, that we get more of that business? What's that forecasted revenue? We like to do this off of like company size. So let's say we close a Fortune 500 company and they just paid our client $15K. We know that there's more business there, and we can forecast using our client to say, hey, how much business do you think this could mature into? And they'll give you an estimate. They're not going to usually say anything other than that. So now we have a true lifetime gross profit with estimates on how that's going to mature. So that's the way to do it. And then, so that's the very first thing. So that's how, that's like your baseline of you can spend this amount of money and be profitable. So you take in that deal size, and then you understand, okay, if we're doing multi-million dollar accounts and multi-million dollar deals, then you can pretty much spend as much money as you want to acquire that customer. So now let's go through CAC. So this is customer or client acquisition cost. Okay. So everything that goes into acquiring that customer goes into this. This will be software, advertising. If you're doing that, it'll go into, if we have a fee on our deal with you, it'll be like a marketing fee, a retainer, any staff, payroll that's used to that's used to close, not to fulfill, used to close a deal. So it's pretty much every expense is used to close a deal. Okay. So also salesperson commissions, marketing commissions, revenue splits, retainers, advertising for like cold email outreach. If you're using a LinkedIn software, if you're using an email software, the email inboxes, all the list building, all the list fees, all the verifications, all the AI credits, all of that. All that goes into AI credits are going to be huge now. But if you're doing cold outreach, like this is the thing about it, it's so cheap, right? Like cold outreach is probably the cheapest expense in your stack versus like advertising, which it just takes forever. So having a really good cold outreach firm now is able to open up doors for you, because you're paying for them to open up that door versus the actual software and stuff. That's just one thing to keep in mind. So customer acquisition cost. So pretty much this CAC, we're looking for now, number 3, once you have both these numbers, so we know lifetime gross profit with estimates on maturity, and then you have your CAC, customer acquisition cost, we're looking at number 3 is CAC to LTGP. And then I like to do 30-day and then matured. So the reason we do 30-day lifetime gross profit, because where you're going to be to start, and then it also tells you where you're going to be after this account fully matures. And we like to show this to our clients sometimes if they ask for it, but also we keep it internally to just keep an eye on, are our clients going to be profitable, and when will they be profitable on this? Ideally, we can be profitable on the 30-day, but realistically, sometimes you don't get these major accounts to close and be profitable right out of the gate. We just had a client, they closed a really small deal with a major brand, and then they just got their second PO from them for a lot more units. That maturity piece is very important, especially if you're a manufacturer out there. So what we're really looking for in this ratio, CAC to lifetime gross profit, is 1 to 3 is really good. And I would just say we want to do 1 to 3 in the 30-day, but also if you can do 1 to 3 at the very least in the matured, it's going to be good. And if you're worth a damn and your deal sizes are legit, and they probably are if you're watching this video and you're thinking about working with us, that maturity, you will absolutely crush this. We have clients that are 1 to 30 right now. They're making so much money on stuff. So 1 to 30 is where you want to be. This tells you that you can pretty much spend as much as you want to scale. Now, this point, you just need to keep an eye on cash flow, as that's the constraint, because if it's only the matured, you don't want to be just scaling all your campaigns like crazy, throwing cash out the door, hiring a million salespeople. Like that's not going to help you. Eventually you'll close deals, but obviously there's some efficiency that's going to drop in this ratio, but you don't want to be doing that and expect cash flow like in the next 30 days. Usually you have a longer sales cycle, so you need to wait for those accounts to mature. And so then you can actually figure out like what's the time frame. Okay. And then once you understand all these pieces, like we know where we need to be to acquire a client profitably. So what I like to do is I like to take lifetime gross profit and I do the 30-day, and then I'll actually do the matured estimate, and then we'll map out our KPIs. So in any marketing funnel, there's key performance indicators that we know if we hit, you're profitable. And so the very first thing that we ask you is if we get you a qualified lead on the phone, qualified, we call them an MQL, marketing qualified lead, what is close rate? So everybody will say, oh man, if we get in front of the right person, like we close 100%. I'm like, that's bullshit. There's no way you do. But they say, yeah, we do, because we'll close them, but it just won't be this year. Maybe it's next year. And so I'm like, all right, that just means they haven't closed yet. But of all the meetings that you've had in the past 30 days or in the past year or the past 2 years, however much sample size you have, of all those qualified meetings that you had, how many of them closed? That's what I want to know. I don't want to know how many deals are thinking about it or are in limbo. I want to know how many meetings, how many companies did you pitch? How many of them actually closed? Okay. And so that's pretty much what we're looking for. How many meetings, qualified meetings, how many gave you money? Okay, that's your close. And the reason we do that is because it tells us this is like very bare bones percentage of like you meet with somebody, they give you money. And then also you can, if you do average sales cycle, that helps too. Average sales cycle on this. Okay. But then after we do that, what's your close rate? What's your show rate? So how many times do you book a meeting and then they actually show? That's very important. A lot of times if we're doing cold outreach and we book a meeting, like the show rates are really high just because of our strategy and we're getting them a ton of content ahead of time. So they already know who you are and they've done a lot of work. That's actually why we were able to get the meeting, is because they know who you are. So what's your show rate? Usually our show rate is very high. High would be like 75% plus, and then reschedule rate would probably cover the next 25. So that's good. What's your show rate? And then qualification rate is very important too. Like how many times does your sales team meet with somebody that's qualified? I'm not going to write that in this, but what's your show rate? And then as far as cold outreach, the actual cold outreach funnel, we'll do book call rate. Book call rate, what is that right now? This is how many positive replies, how many booked calls. Okay, that's pretty much that. A lot of people do this. We're very good at this. I think we're above industry norm on this, but obviously there's no like metrics on industry standards on this. But booked call rate, and then after the booked call, we'll do response rate. We'll do a positive response rate. Obviously I'm going backwards here. Positive response rate, and then number of messages sent. So then on this breaks apart. So like email is pretty simple on this. We don't track open sends you to spam. Maybe we'll just turn it on for 1 or 2 days if we're testing a new subject line, but usually we just do one word subject lines that somebody that they are like their friend might send them, but that one word is pertaining to the email. Usually those work really well. Number of messages sent on LinkedIn would be connection requests, connected, the percentage connected, and then we'll do open email sent, premium sent, and then group messages sent. So then you get like your actual messages response. So you get your response, then you get your positive response, and then you can go through the entire funnel. So you can get all that. So what's interesting is, so the last piece of this, so once you have all your KPIs squared away, you have to make sure when you go through your LTGP, so lifetime gross profit, and you actually also you subtract your CAC, your cost to acquire a customer. Actually, hold on. Yeah. So this number is pure profit. What you really want to do is model out what you want this number to be, and then you can work backwards to what your CAC needs to be. And then if you can work backwards for that, you can work backwards what your lifetime gross profit needs to be. And usually like the CAC thing is what you're trying to play with and what you're trying to give yourselves parameters, because then we know to close one deal that's at this deal size. Actually, it's this deal size. To close a deal at deal size, we need these KPIs in the funnel. And then you input their close rate, and this tells you how many meetings you need, and so on and so forth. And then that tells you how many meetings, sorry, let me write it out. How many meetings, and then how many positive responses you need, which tells you how many responses you need, how many messages you need to send, and so on. So then now you have your KPIs. If you launch a campaign, so now we have 6. If you're monitoring a campaign and it's below these KPIs, then you know this campaign sucks and you have to go through the bottlenecks and figure out how to adjust it. And usually you can solve it by a better list, better lead magnet, or better message. Sometimes it's deliverability for emails, but very rarely. As long as you have, I forget his name, but he's like the big time clay guy. His name's Eric something, Eric N something. I don't know. He's big into cold outreach. I think he's got an agency. They just do a lot of cold email. They don't do any LinkedIn stuff, but we use a lot of those email stuff on our email department. And what he says is you have all your inboxes, but you also have literally other inboxes that are exactly one-to-one with those inboxes that are just warming up. So if any of these get burned, you have full sending capacity on the backside. You can just rotate in. So then as soon as one gets burned, you rotate the other one in, you get another one, you start warming that one up. And that allows you to just constantly be sending very fast. But this is how you establish your KPIs on a campaign. And I can't tell you, like, this is serious business owner stuff. This is serious actual entrepreneur information. So a lot of your marketers and a lot of your agencies that are out there, they are not doing this. And that's why you're constantly getting burned on these deals, is like you don't understand what it's going to take to be profitable, and you can't read the tea leaves on these KPIs. For us, we like to pick clients where if we just book one deal, if we just book one meeting and it closes, we're like at a 1 to 40 CAC to LTGP. So we like to stack our odds into this, right? But it's not to say that we haven't done lower ticket deals in the past. We have a dental lab client there's like reoccurring orders. So like one lab can be like $37, and they have some of the lowest prices in the world, in the US, but also the world. And for us, we're able to get a dental office onto their actual platform, and then they just get that reoccurring orders from those dental offices. And that over time is what allows us to be profitable on this. If they were doing like advertising, it's very tough for them to be profitable on that on the front end, but on the back end, definitely sure. So that's essentially how to do your economics. That's how to do your actual MoneyMake Marketing math. So if that helped, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. If you have any questions about that, comment below, or hit the website in our description and you can come and apply to work with us. But that's all I got for you guys today. Hope it was helpful. Comment, subscribe. Ryan Ogren, MoneyMake Marketing. See ya.